Morning.
I had to check then, Sue. Morning.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like it's afternoon already.
Yeah. Still morning.
Yeah.
I'm just still admitting.
Okay. I'll tick to
So
see.
will do I need to do anything about a register or anything?
No, I'm doing that now. So
Right.
I can see one of the four that wasn't in earlier is in now. And again, just for everyone, what we'll do is we'll record. Sue's recorded this already, and we'll make sure recordings are available. So if you manage to slightly miss part of the mental skills one, we'll share that later on today. And obviously we expect to see you back this afternoon for the anti-doping one. But so we should.
Has the recording started already?
It seems to have, yeah.
Oh, it must have been on.
Yeah, I think it's on auto.
Yeah. So I will share my screen, which I think you can all see.
I can see, yeah.
Give us a thumbs up or something, guys. You can use your little reactions to let us know you are listening and with us. Thank you, thank you. So, how long are we giving everybody, John?
So I would probably start now, Sue. What are we? We're at 32. So
Right.
I'll check and then just chase the last few that are missing.
Okay, so welcome everybody and Happy New Year to you all. This morning's session is, if you didn't already know, it's health and safety. So I think I'll just, if you can all see it like this, I won't put it on the, oh, in fact, no, I will start it as a slideshow. And then I'll just shut it down when I need you to do anything. Okay, so when I ask you to do a task, I'll just stop sharing my screen so that I can then look in the chat, because most of it is just going to be done today in the chat. There's quite a lot to cover. We won't be covering everything on the slides. I will ask you to go through the slides at the end when this presentation's sent out to you, because there's some videos that are included. And I don't want to sit and watch the videos with you, but it just might help you with the workbook. Okay. So we are covering units 17 and 18, work in a healthy and safe way at training and competition venues, understanding health and safety and at training and competition venues. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So the learning outcomes, as you can see there, we've got demonstrating understanding the basic requirements of health and safety legislation and its relevance to you as an elite handball player, and be able to identify hazards that are likely to occur at training and competition venues, carry out risk assessments of the types of hazards that may occur, and explain how to behave and what procedures to follow after accidents and emergencies. Okay, so let's get you thinking health and safety, all things health and safety. Now you can switch off from your mental skills, for those of you who've just done those. So why is health and safety important in sport? So anything that comes to mind at all with regards to why you think health and safety is important, put any comments that you've got, responses in the chat box. So one word, little phrase, whatever comes to mind when you think of health and safety. Preventing injury, so you don't get injured, preventing injury. You're all thinking injuries, good, good, good. Avoid risks of injury, don't get injured. Anything else? Protection of players, yeah. Staying safe. Anything else anyone wants to add to that? Okay, protection of everyone there, yeah, good. Protection of everyone, protecting yourself and others, good. Okay, right, let's go back. That's fine, that's great. At least you're all thinking health, all things health and safety. That's just a quick starter for you. And now I can't move my slide on for some reason. Oh, right, okay. So the importance of a duty of care, which is what you've just touched on. So a definition of that, and that's obviously covered in health and safety, is everybody has an importance of a duty of care, whether that's you, me, venue, facility operators, and anybody else that is involved in any sport at all. Okay, so the definition of that is a moral or legal obligation to ensure the safety or well-being of others. And health and safety is everybody's responsibility and concern. It's not just the facility operators. So when you step foot into a sports centre and go onto the court, you have a responsibility for health and safety, as well as the people that are providing you with that venue and equipment. Okay, so we've all got a responsibility to play. Coaches, officials, everybody involved. Okay, so sport and the law. I'm sure you all recognise that guy there. So health and safety laws governing sport. So what I want you to do now is, if there are any laws at all that you know of, it doesn't matter if you've got the right terminology for it, any laws regarding health and safety governing sports that you are aware of, just drop them into the chat. Any laws at all that you can think about that related to sport? No? Have you got your phones there that you can have a quick Google, maybe? Get some ideas of things? If not, we'll move on. I was hoping that you meant using enhancing drugs. Yeah. Children's Act, good. Yeah, drug related, you are breaking laws there, yeah. Children's Act, yeah, good. Any others that you can think of? Okay, no worries. Right, so we've got quite a few there. So here's a few of the legislations that are used daily in sport. And in your workbooks, which you've all received, once you start completing those, you'll see that there is a focus for quite a few of these. So we're starting at the top there. We've got personal protective equipment, PPE, which is probably one that we're all pretty much aware of in the current situation that we're in. So that's been bandied about for the last 9 months, is PPE, hasn't it? And I'm sure everybody in your pocket, when you go out, you've got some form of PPE that you need that's required by law currently. Yeah, you all know where we're going with this one. Thinking about it relating to sport, switch from where we're at now and start thinking about sport and PPE relating to sport. Then we've also got reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences, which is RIDOR, or it's shortened to RIDOR. Health and Safety at Work Act, yeah, which governs everybody when they're working. Manual handling operations regulations there. We've got the dates on these as well as. And then the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, which can be shortened to COSH. Then there's also an Adventurous Activities Licensing Authority regulations around outdoor activities mainly, which when you go on school trips, etc., providers of activities have to adhere to those and have a license. So there's the main ones that we are going to be focusing on. Okay, so hopefully you're a little bit knowledgeable now. Okay, we're going to focus on a little bit more of those in depth. So we are looking at the Health and Safety at Work Act now. Okay. So with this, you've got, it's an Act of Parliament, main piece of UK health and safety legislation, and it places a duty on all employers to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the health and safety and welfare at work of all their employees. Okay, so when you go in a leisure centre, the leisure centre providers are obviously operating the facilities for you going in and everybody who works for them, as well as safe operation and maintenance of the working environment, safe use of handling and storage of dangerous substances, adequate training of staff, welfare provisions for staff, and employers must also keep and revise a written record of health and safety policy. Okay, now on this one here, as you can see, there's a link to Introduction to Health and Safety at Work YouTube video. Not going to open that now. Like I said, that's for you to look at afterwards when this video is sent out to you and you're starting to complete the workbook. Okay, next one is RIDOR. So when any injuries, diseases or dangerous occurrences are present in the workplace, these have to be reported and recorded appropriately. And this includes work-related deaths, any major injuries or over 3-day injuries, work-related diseases, dangerous occurrences, near-miss accidents. Again, there's a couple of YouTube videos for you to look at later. And on this one, this is where accident report forms are absolutely critical, and all leisure providers and obviously governing bodies have to report any accidents that are related to any of our training sessions that you attend, anything that happens on site in any venues. These are all recorded, and via RIDOR, if anybody was to break an arm, leg, have a serious injury, then that has to be reported, okay, to the Health and Safety Executive, and they might feel that they want to investigate that. Okay, PPE, right, so with this one, obviously we touched on this before. Employees have a duty of care concerning the provision and use of personal protective equipment at work. PPE is equipment that will protect the user against health or safety risks at work. Obviously at work, we're thinking in the wider context now, so it's not just going to work, we're relating this to sports and yourselves. So it can include items such as safety helmets, gloves, eye protection, high visibility clothing, safety footwear. Again, there's a YouTube video for you to look at later. There's also a YouTube video there relating to IHF, International Handball Federation rules with regard to equipment and accessories clarification that includes safety equipment that you are allowed, so PPE that you are allowed to wear at international competition. Okay, so thinking sport wise now, if you can post in the chat any PPE that relates to you as an elite handball player, So do you want to just post that in the chat now? So any PPE as a handball player that you might wear? Knee pads, yep. Anything else? Appropriate footwear, absolutely, yep, good. Anything else? Goalkeeper gloves? No, we don't wear gloves at all in handball. Goalkeepers are not allowed to wear gloves. Compression sleeves, yeah. Ankle supports, a box, yeah. Gum shields, yes, you can wear gum shields. They are allowed. Anything else? Okay, that's great. Well done, guys and girls. So if you have a look at the IHF, and not now, the YouTube video, you will see that there is a pictorial there of all the things that are allowed in international competition. Obviously, those of you that need to wear glasses, then if you don't wear contact lenses, you have to be wearing corrective goggles so that they are secured to your head. And we shouldn't be allowing you to play, we shouldn't be allowing any players to play without having goggles for corrective vision if you need it, or contact lenses if you need. So glasses are really a no-no. And that's probably one of the things that we do see players wearing when they're just playing. There's a whole host of other things there that you'll see when you have a look at the video. Okay, so that's PPE covered. So how does the law apply to me or to you? So think how these laws apply to you as a handball player, and what I'd like you to do again. So we've got the health and safety at work, PPE, what else did we cover? RIDO. Think how these laws apply to you as a handball player. And if you want to put some comments in the chat. So we've covered some of the PPE that you wear, and obviously it's not a law that you wear any of those, but it is for your personal protection that you might wear some or all. So thinking with regards to the other laws that we've touched on, how would that apply to you? How do you think that might apply to you? Any ideas? No, we're a little bit of a blank. So think about the Health and Safety at Work Act in its biggest sense, and maybe going into a sports hall and you might notice something that's not quite right. And we talked about everybody having a responsibility. So what if you go into a sports hall, you're about to start a handball match, and in the middle of the court there is 2, 3 handballs and some bibs that somebody's left, and right by the bench on the sideline you notice that there's a drink that's been spilled. What might you do? Any ideas? Post any comments you've got in the chat. Clear them away, move them and clear them away. Report it or tidy it yourself. Yep. So you might need to, obviously, if you've not got the right equipment to do that, you might have to move them from the court yourself or report it and get somebody, facility provider, to maybe clear it up if you've not got the right equipment. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? What about any of the equipment that you might be using? You might be asked to check that you're ready to start the game. What things might you check on? The match ball, yeah. Make sure the ball's the correct size, yeah. But any other equipment that we might be using on court that you might want to have a look at. Yeah, the goals, yeah. So maybe you might be asked to just go and check the goals are set up right. You know, if they need weighting down, the goalkeeper might just be checking that there are sandbags or whatever weights are used to secure the goals down, that there's maybe nets if required. Anything else with regards to your teammates, maybe? Everyone has correct footwear, yeah? Yeah, you're thinking along the lines now. It's things that are related to you to make sure that you're safe, your teammates are safe. Nobody's wearing jewellery and can injure anybody. Make sure your team is prepared, like hair up and jewellery, yeah? Maybe nails, making sure nobody's got like false nails on. Bit of a bugbear of mine, that is. Anything else? We spoke about the PPE if you needed, with regards to maybe corrected vision and goggles. We've talked about equipment in the sports hall itself. What about things that your coach might have, or the officials might have, if anything happens without giving it away? Every team, I think, in the league is instructed to have their own first aid kits. Yeah, well done. So just to make sure that you're prepared if there is an accident or emergency. Okay, well done. Right, I'll go back to sharing my screen now and we'll carry on. So that's good. You're all thinking along the right lines. Right, okay, this one. Now, this slide, safeguarding in sport. Look at the image. I want you to look at that image. Coach there in front of a group of pupils, children, players, yeah? And I want you to put comments in the chat box. What does that image, with regards to thinking about safeguarding in sport, what does that image say to you? And we're obviously thinking about laws related to safeguarding in sport. What does that image say to you? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I want to look at your comments. So think about what that image actually says to you. Anything at all that that image says with regards to safeguarding in sport. Anything at all that you might expect from the coach? Yeah, good points. Unorganised, not equally involved. Making sure that those children aren't exploited. Yeah. Precautions for beginners. Yeah. Anything else that the coach might have a responsibility to those players? Safeguarding, precautions for beginners. Yeah. What would you expect the coach to have? You as a parent were taking your children to that session. Safety training, yeah. So you might expect the coach, if he's the only one, a DBS, yeah. Some sort of DBS check or whatever it is, yeah. Okay. Anything else? A coaching qualification, yeah. I think those are good expectations there that you'd expect. So that's great. You're thinking along those lines, along the right lines there for safeguarding in sport. Those are what we would expect a coach to be having. If I was a parent taking my son, daughter to a session, I'd be looking at what level of coaching qualification, maybe a first aid qualification if there wasn't anybody else there, a DBS certificate as a minimum. Yeah. Okay, well done. Right, we're moving on now to what are risk assessments. So look at the two images. There's one guy with his notepad there, his pen and paper, hard hat. Obviously looking at that from maybe is he in a warehouse, factory type place. Second image looks to me pretty much like that's a instructor in a gym. Yeah, looks like there's a gym in the background. So, do we know what a risk assessment is? Have we got any volunteers? I'll stop sharing the screen. Any volunteers who would like to tell us, not in the chat box this time, who would like to tell us what they think a risk assessment is? Any volunteers? Just turn on your mic and no volunteers, so shall I just pick on someone? Let me see. I shall pick on somebody that I don't know too well. And you just need to tell us what you think a risk assessment is. So let's go with Ben Hughes. Any ideas, Ben? Oh, Alice.
Would it not be pretty self-explanatory? Would it not just be assessing all the risks of an event and then writing down how you're going to solve them, make sure they don't become an issue?
Okay, good. That's pretty concise. Yeah, so risk assessment is where you assess hazards, yeah, and then you're going to look at reducing those hazards to a minimal. So, and you've got to try and grade them, what those hazards might be against risk. So usually high, medium and low. And then what you can do to reduce those hazards to being as low as possible. Sometimes you might look at a hazard and you can do something straight away to eliminate it. Yeah. So a risk assessment is when you're recording all that as well as. Okay. So evaluating the risks something may have, so identifying the negatives of something is what Alice has put in the chat. So well done, Ben. Well done, Alice. So a risk assessment is where you, I'll start sharing my screen again now because we've got some information about this. So risk assessment is a careful examination of what could cause harm to people. So hazards. So you're actually looking at hazards so that you can weigh up whether you've taken enough precautions or should do more to prevent harm. Okay, so there's there's a link to some risk assessments in sport, BTEC level 3 on YouTube, which you can have a look at, again, to help you with the workbook. So the difference between a hazard and a risk. So a hazard is something that can cause harm. So we've already started talking about these. So maybe a water spillage, incorrect footwear, loose balls, faulty equipment, goals, etc. And the risk then is the probability of that hazard actually causing somebody harm. So we need to reduce that risk as low as we can, and we usually grade it, like I said, as a high, medium and low on a risk assessment form. There's no standard form, there's different templates that we can use. England Handball have some forms which you will at later stages be asked to complete. But for now, you just need to be looking at what a risk assessment is, okay? And in the workbook, there's this a template for you to complete, thinking about a risk assessment and hazards that you might include, okay? So this would relate to any venue, yeah, really. So what you would do, you'd be looking at assessing the area, identifying hazards, which was what we've just spoke about. So any objects, materials, conditions, the actual venue, court, surface, if you're outdoors, maybe looking at the conditions. What outdoor conditions might you look at? And if you just want to unmute yourself rather than putting in the chat, if you were outdoors, what kind of conditions would you be thinking about and obviously assessing, which is going to be different to indoors? Anybody? Unmute yourselves.
Making sure that the like playing area or like the court isn't wet or like slippery.
Yeah, good. So the actual surface again, outdoors, yeah. Any other conditions outdoors which might be different to indoors?
You have to take into account the weather.
Yeah, absolutely, the weather. So, you know, ranging from snow conditions, which some of us have got at the moment, if you were outdoors, ice, etc., and also to if you're in sunnier climes, and it obviously might be really sunny. So think about your athletes then, and it might be too hot. So maybe getting shade, making sure you rehydrating, yeah. So those are a whole range of hazards that you might have to consider if you as a coach, team manager, if we were going from, for example, going from a session at Stoke Mandeville to going to a session at the Partilla Cup, we'd have to look at slightly different risk assessments, maybe travel arrangements again, looking into what any hazards there might be with regards to taking a team through an airport, maybe going on a ferry, things like that. You would have to identify on your risk assessment. So you look at analysing who's affected and what accidents could occur. Look at control measures to improve safety. And then you would transfer this information into a formal report, which is what we've said, with review dates where you might have to change things because things might have changed. Okay, and you're looking at always reducing accident and injury rates. So there's just a little diagram there that looks at the risk management there, assessing, identifying, analysing, controlling, reducing and transferring that information onto a document that can be shared if needed. Any questions? Shout up. I'm conscious that this isn't a particularly, it's probably not one of the most interesting topics, but we do all have a part to play, don't we? Okay, I shall carry on.
I think, Sue, I think also just to add and to reinforce, it is one of those things that, you know, some of you will have some knowledge on. I'll just put my camera on. With relation to some of your BTEC work that you've done. But it is one of those things, a bit like anti-doping that Bobby's going to cover this afternoon, that if you get it wrong, it's going to stop you doing everything else. So, you know, almost this becomes, and Sue knows this from her significant experience as a team manager, this becomes the first priority. Because if you get this wrong, if you don't identify hazard, if you don't, you know, control the situation or minimize the risk or the injury rates, you're unable to perform, you know. And that can be as simple as doing your shoelaces up. That can be as simple as, you know, taking off jewelry. That can be as simple as protecting your teammates. You know, that can be as simple as, you know, if we were at Stoke Mandeville today, you know, walking, if it was icy down in Aylesbury, forgot where it was there.
Yeah.
You know, walking from the sports hall across to the classrooms, you know, you could trip and injure yourself there, and that would take you out of action. So it is something that, whilst it's not the most riveting in terms of, you know, there's lots of sexy stuff to talk about, you know, it is one of those things that you constantly need to have an eye on, because it could, you know, scupper any plans you've got to perform to the level you want to perform at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. Okay, so accident or emergency. Again, this, to a degree, this is your responsibility. So just looking at what is the difference between an accident and emergency. Anybody got any ideas?
Is an emergency more serious than an accident?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, it's got a few little scenarios for you here. Right, so looking at this one. So the player's got blood on her head. She's concussed, she's unconscious. Is it an emergency? Look at the image, player on the floor. What can you see?
So Luke has put yes, Caitlin's put emergency, Emily has put yes.
Okay, thanks for that, John. She's unresponsive as well. And she's got heavy blood loss. So yes, we would consider that to be an emergency. So what might we do? Or what would you do? I'll stop sharing my screen. What would you do? Any ideas? Get the medics and an ambulance, yeah. So first point of call there for that official team manager is get the medics that might be there at that match to come over, and then if there isn't an ambulance on standby there, call an ambulance. Don't move her until a paramedic arrives. Yeah, good. You might be, if you were maybe a bystander, you might be going asked to get the first aid person, the medics. You might be asked to phone for an ambulance if needed. It looks obviously like a pretty good setup, so I'm sure there would be first aid around, and if there wasn't an ambulance, then that would be called. So that would be classed as an emergency. Thanks, well done for that. Good responses there. Next one. Okay, start thinking about that image now. So there's no blood. She can hobble, walk. This was at London 2012. So for this one, it's looking like she needs first aid, not an ambulance. So what do you think it is? Any responses in the chat, John?
Yes. So it's a few people have put accident. So Chloe, Matt, Alice, Abyss, Izzy,
Yeah.
accident.
Yeah, so we're thinking here that this is more an accident for the moment. Yeah. Next one. So this player's gone down. She's grabbing her knee, so she's visibly in a lot of pain. So start thinking about what you think it might be. Add in any comments if you want to.
So Abby has put, it's put emergency.
Okay.
Deja has put accident. So
it could be broken leg, torn ligament. She might need an ambulance. Could be an emergency. There's no blood. Can't see any blood. So is it an accident? If she's responsive and able to get up, could it be an accident? Would we class it as an accident? So with this one, a little bit more difficult, isn't it? This potentially could be either an accident or an emergency. So it's not always that easy to see, is it? Whether it is an accident or an emergency. So we may have to treat that as an emergency. Yeah. Okay, so when to call 999. So here, for any of you that have done any kind of first aid or have got any knowledge of first aid, and obviously more and more children, young people are going on kind of basic first aid, things to watch out for if they're in the home and maybe with grandparents, etc. But thinking about relating this to sport now, and here's a list obviously of some of the things when you might call 999. And obviously if someone is seriously ill or injured and their life is at risk, then you would have a duty of care to call emergency services, yeah. Because you've got a duty of care to look out for everybody around you. Some examples there might include for emergencies, and again this will help you with completing your workbook. So there's also a YouTube video for you to look at about emergency evacuations, and a list there of things that could possibly be treated as an emergency, as well as the emergency related to individuals. Then you've got a list of things that could be classed as in an emergency, maybe in a venue. Yeah, so you're looking at things like fire evacuations, bomb scares, floods, Maybe there's an individual that's acting suspiciously, so you might have to notify somebody. So again, there's another YouTube video there that you can look at in your own time when you start completing the workbook to help you complete that if you need further help. Okay. An accidents and when to get first aid help. Again, looking at whether people are responsive and how comprehensive they are. If they're not in too much pain, minimal blood loss. Obviously, some things can just be solved by a plaster. If they're able to move, walk, talk to you. If the condition improves quickly, if it's a minor illness such as a cold. It's often the case that A&E may be required to double check, particularly if it's any head injuries or suspected broken bones. Then you would not necessarily call out an ambulance, but take somebody to A&E to get them checked out. So an accident, that might be the result of an accident as well, as where you're still having to call somebody out. Okay. Right, so that completes my presentation. So what's expected now from you is, first of all, have you got any questions? So I'll stop sharing that. Have you got any questions? If you want to put your questions in the chat or unmute yourselves and you can ask. So you would be expected now in the workbooks that you've received to complete H1, 2, 3 and 4, and the workbook is due in 2 weeks, is that right, John? I put the 18th of January on there. I wasn't sure. I think we were giving 2 weeks to everybody in the past on previous workbooks.
Yes, that's right. Yep. Yeah. And again, we are conscious, because I know we've got essentially, so Alice has asked that question, we've got three different topics that we're covering today. We are conscious of what your workload might be in the next couple of weeks with regard to any exams that you might have. So do just sort of get in touch with us and let us know. So whilst we're going to set that as a deadline for today for both the mental skills, the health and safety and the anti-doping, we are still going to give you a bit of flex around that if you are struggling with the work that you go back to. And again, understanding that for some of you, you're not going back into school at the moment. So we're mindful of, you don't have free time because you're not at school. You still are as busy and still are, challenged with stuff. To answer your question, Alex, submit that on Teams. Forgotten what it is. It's been a week and a half since I've been off it. Submit that on Microsoft Teams. So if you can add that to the files section in your channel, and then if you can just tag Joao to let him know that you've completed that, because he's going to be the one that's going to be assessing it. And the same thing for mental skills, and the same thing for anti-doping when we do that this afternoon. So question there, Sue, for H2, could you give an example of a hazard?
We could use, I'm not sure what you're looking for. So in H2, let me just grab that, open that workbook so I can look at that. So, yes, so an example of a hazard for you in your sporting environment could be you could use anything related to the goalposts. So that's a good one, is maybe checking that all the bolts are fastened and the crossbars in the correct place, maybe the weights on the goals, if they're needed, are in the right place. So I think for us particularly, a hazard is definitely goalposts. Yeah, It could be your footwear as well. That's another good one, is your correct footwear. Because sometimes if you wear running trainers indoors, then that can create a bit of a hazard for you with regards to, they tend to be higher, don't they? If you're wearing a running training shoe indoors to play handball, a bit higher, and you're more susceptible then to maybe going over them when you land after maybe jump shooting. So there's a couple of examples. Does that help? Does that help, Alice? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Can anybody else think of any specific hazards that you would think about related to handball? When you come to do the second part of H2, there's drop down boxes in that one to give you some ideas. The first three you've got to come up with yourself. Anything else? We've got the goalposts there, maybe footwear. This, maybe the surface, drink spillages, someone coming with wet shoes. Yeah, wet surface. So checking the court. Apologies for that noise, I'm not sure where that's coming from, if you can hear it. Yeah, so there's a few examples there. Your kit, PPE, yeah. You could also think about, as a hazard, depending upon where spectators are and the venue. So if spectators are sat close to the court, that could be a hazard whereby they could get hit by a ball to cause an injury to spectators. So that's just going a little bit wider than just, you know, that's looking at the venue and other people involved. Obviously, if you're at somewhere like Stoke Mandeville where you've got a separate spectating gallery, then that's, you know, different. But if you're, for example, at those of you that have played at Derby Arena, when we've had two courts side by side and we've got spectators around the court, then that would be classed as a hazard as to where you put the seating to minimise the ball. You know, you're obviously not going to seat them at the back of the goal area. You would be putting the seats towards the middle of the court, or between the courts towards the middle, where the ball doesn't always come flying out around the middle areas. Yeah. Does that help? Everybody had a quick look at the workbook, and any more questions related to that? Okay. No, I'll take that as a no, and you're all happy to get on with that today at some point. Thanks, Alice. Thanks for the thumbs up. Anybody else want to give us a thumbs up? You're good to go. If you've got any questions at all, you can drop me an email. You can drop John an email, and the PowerPoint will be being sent out to you. I think will you put it on Teams, John?
Yeah, if you send me it, so
yeah, we'll do. It can go on Teams, so you can then have a look through at all those YouTube videos. Obviously, we wouldn't have had time to look at them all today, but they are there to help you. And particularly for those of you that are interested in your PPE, do look at the IHF regulations with regards to what you are and what you're not allowed to wear during international competition. For those of you that might be playing later in the year, fingers crossed, internationally, things that are allowed with regards to your PPE and kit. Okay, so that's all from me. Thank you all for listening and joining in, and hope you found it useful.